just at the point of our growth where we were interested in expanding texturally. We made a few records that were, bass, drums, guitar, and we were very conscious of not having too many overdubs. At the same time, we wanted to be part of what was going on. There was a movement of synthesizers coming into the fore, into all kinds of pop bands and also prog bands. We wanted to somehow figure out a way to bring that in and still be a three-piece. Emerson, Lake and Palmer. I was a big fan. Emerson's Moog sound was quintessential and inspiring. Inspired me to want a Minimoog. But the first Moog I bought was, of course, the Moog Taurus pedals. It was just like a light bulb moment because I realized I could play the backing rhythm track to Alex's fabulous solo on Xanadu, and instead of losing the bottom end, I had this different bottom end from the 3 different preset sounds that were available on the Taurus pedals. And then I had this new job of being a footman. Who knew I would spend the next 20 years, messing about with keyboards and using my feet. And it was the beginning of my journey to becoming a one-man band kind of thing. So for me, I graduated to the Minimoog as a natural part of evolution from the tease that was that little squeaky sound you could get out of the Taurus pedals. I wanted a more substantial tone, and then we were writing songs that were quite adventurous, like Xanadu and A Farewell to Kings. And by the time we were going in to write Farewell to Kings, I knew I wanted a Minimoog, and I wanted to see if I could figure out how to get a noise out of it. Of course, I dreamed of a glorious Keith Emerson-style zooming sound, and when I discovered the portamento button, my life changed. But, a lot of the synths in those days were those huge banks of ARPs and so on and so forth. And I think it was the first time that a schlub like myself could dream big with an instrument that was sort of easy to get around. You could get your head around it. You could learn about waveforms by just clicking the dial and blending them and playing with the modulation wheel. I think that's the legacy of the Minimoog. Not only does it sound sophisticated and has a fat sound, but it's not daunting to get your hands on. Can you imagine Tom Sawyer without that little break? That song would not have sounded the same. I can't really remove it from the song. And I guess the same thing could be said about Xanadu and, of course, Subdivisions. By then, I was full-on keyboards. So those 3 songs, the Minimoog is pretty much part of the basic structure. I can't really hear those songs without that instrument. For Tom Sawyer, for example, I played around with sawtooth and square waves, trying to blend the 2 of them so that I got a fatter sound from the square wave and a bit of riz from the sawtooth wave. I think there was a couple of songs, maybe Madrigal on the later album, that I was using more sine wavy sounds, try to replicate flute. In the Trees, for example, that's a Minimoog. Xanadu is really not that far off a sound from Tom Sawyer, frankly. Maybe a bit more square wave on Xanadu. And that's one of the reasons that I loved it and why it works in those songs, because you can take a sound like the Tom Sawyer sound and you can start clicking through different waveforms and change the modulation point and where it crosses over and add a bit of sweep to it, and suddenly you have a whole new sound. The various synthesizers that started to come along post Minimoog fed my hunger to learn more about melody, more about texture, and how I could put more sounds into our sound. Before we wrote Hemispheres, we had this disastrous white elephant built, the original monster keyboard rack. So what we were trying to do was we were trying to invent MIDI before there was MIDI. And this guy promised he could do it, and he worked on it, and it arrived, and of course the entire crew laughed because it was huge. It was this big monster, and it didn't work. And then we cut it down to a more compact size. I think the red color became a thing around 83. Grace Under Pressure, I had a variety of devices, OBX, OBX-A, PPG, Taurus pedals were still in there, JP8, and of course the Minimoog. And that's the period that Jack took all the sides off and had them painted to match Neil's drum kit, which was the inspiration. So he had this red drum kit, and then later on we wrote a song called I See Red. And so it was definitely our red period. When I look back on the history of me playing a Minimoog, I think of those earliest days, dry ice, clouds floating onto the stage, and I'm standing there with just a set of Taurus pedals and a Model D in front of me, and we're about to break into the meat of Xanadu. All the way through our more complicated periods, and then into the red period, where everything had these gorgeous candy apple red sides. It really is a thrill for me to see this signature release in that red color that is so representative of one of the most fertile periods in Russia's creative history. We're having Geddy Lee's signature Minimoog. I think it's a super cool accolade, frankly. Some of our most important bits of music feature that instrument. I think what's even cooler is the fact that, to my understanding, this is the first time Moog has ever produced a signature instrument for any one musician. So that's cool. That's very cool.